President-elect Donald Trump's campaign promise of mass deportation has amassed quite the buzz. In fact, it was one of his main campaign promises.
But a newly released report from the U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement shows that President Joe Biden actually carried out the highest level of deportation since 2014. ICE deported 271,000 immigrants last fiscal year, and around 32% of those were people with criminal histories. The report reveals former President Barack Obama deported around 400,000 in 1 year, but a large number of those were recent border crossers. Trump's deportation plans may face steeper challenges. Tom Homan, Trump's choice for border czar, spoke to CNN anchor Caitlin Collins this week. Collins asked Homan if there were any red lines he'd draw. Let's listen to that conversation.
But look, we're going to build detention facilities because, again, this is a massive deportation operation. Let me explain why it's a massive deportation operation. Millions of people enter this country illegally, claiming asylum. Secretary Mayorkas has said under oath numerous times, for those who don't qualify for asylum, they'd be immediately moved. Of course, he didn't do it, so we're going to do it. But people need to understand, the people come to the border to claim asylum. Based on immigration court data over the last decade, 9 out of 10, nearly 9 out of 10 people claim asylum will get an order removal. So when they lose that case, we'll give them the due process. They can make an asylum claim. We'll take them to a judge. But when a judge says they're leaving, they have to leave, because if we don't, like I said, then what the hell are we doing? Just shut down immigration court. It doesn't mean anything more, and take the border patrol off the border because there's no consequences.
Gallup data released over the summer showed that 47% of Americans supported deporting illegal immigrants back to their home countries, which is up 10% from 2019. Also, during Biden's tenure, there have been roughly 8.5 million border encounters nationwide, according to CBP data.
Some Democrats have said they would not abide by Trump's plan for mass deportations. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, for instance, said back in November that she wouldn't cooperate, and Denver Mayor Mike Johnson said he'd be willing to go to jail to stop these efforts. So with so many deportations already taking place, can the president-elect legally up the numbers? Amber, certainly this is, and we've talked about this with regards to the budget conversations, this is obviously one of the things that Donald Trump ran on, right? We've seen those numbers change over time in support of deportation. Now it's a question of whether he can actually get this done, as he has said, in the first 30 or 100 days of the next Congress.
Yeah, it won't be easy. It'll be expensive. There's probably going to be high-profile missteps throughout the process when you're trying to get rid of millions of people. Inevitably, there will be mistakes made. And there, of course, will be a lack of cooperation from some Democratic governors like Maura Healey and Gavin Newsom, where they will not allow state and local police forces to cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement. But looking at the numbers, I did a little bit of basic math on these deportation numbers from Joe Biden, because I do think it is a little bit misleading to say, oh, well, he's done a record number of deportations. Well, there was also a record number of illegal crossings, right? 8.5 million throughout his presidency. If you look at fiscal year 2024, which is the one that was cited here, carrying out 271,484 deportations. Well, that's out of 2.1 million illegal crossings, which puts it at a 12.9% deportation rate. If you compare that to fiscal year 2019 under Trump, I don't want to use 2020 because of the pandemic. I don't think that's a reasonable comparison. 267,000, so still only about 4,000 lower than Biden in 2024. 267,000 deportations out of 1.15 million illegal crossings. That's a 23.3% rate of deportation out of illegal crossings. So sure, there were more in terms of raw numbers, but compared to the overall number of people who came in illegally, really not that significant.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point in terms of the numbers when you compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges, especially with the laws in place with the pandemic. But I wonder what your take, Amber, is on the economic impacts of this mass deportation. We're obviously talking about the financial element of the raw cost, right? Tom Homan has said he needs 100,000 beds in deportation facilities, obviously more immigration judges to process these folks more quickly. But on the back end, you know, we know so many of these folks that are here without documentation are employed in this country, supporting this economy, powering this economy, taking a lot of jobs that, you know, Americans born here really don't want to do, you know, from lettuce pickers to produce to, you know, obviously construction jobs and things like that. I wonder the economic impacts of this with a still fragile economy coming out of COVID.
Yeah, I think there's two main points here, and one of which is that a lot of these jobs are going to be automated in the near future, such as the farm jobs that you're talking about. But the second most important piece is that I don't think we should accept as a country paying people below market wages for work because they're undocumented and essentially taking advantage of their labor. These are jobs that Americans will do if they're given the right wages and the right benefits. They won't do them for maybe $5 an hour and be paid under the table, but they will do them for a real wage because they ultimately have to pay taxes, right? They have to contribute to the system. They have to give actual paperwork to these businesses, and it shouldn't just be a punishment of the illegal aliens who come in and in some cases do take American jobs, but the corporations should be penalized for that as well, right? They should have to pay some kind of fine. There should be E-Verify in place to prevent them from hiring illegal immigrants in the first place. And when you look at immigration data related to the workforce, the Center for Immigration Studies, which I would grant you is more of a right-leaning
Sure.
source,
Yep.
has done a breakdown of the percentage of illegal immigrants in different industries throughout the United States. And they found that both legal and illegal immigrants do not make up a majority of any industry, the workforce of any industry in the U.S. And I think it's a little bit of a misleading sentiment that we won't have people to pick produce if we don't have illegal immigrants here. If we pay people the right wage and don't use slave labor, essentially, then I think we will.
I mean, we're in agreement on that in terms
Yeah.
of these corporations taking advantage of this immigrant population, paying them under the table, sometimes in very dangerous situations, conditions, hardship pay, certainly under the table. But again, I do, we've got the lowest unemployment rate, thank you, Joe Biden, in 50 years, continuing on. I do wonder the effect of removing all of these folks from the workplace. Your point that there are Americans that are willing to take these jobs for a decent wage. That also then speaks to an inflationary element of that. If we are paying folks a living wage for produce picking in certain areas, then that is an inflationary element as well, because we are right now taking advantage of cheap labor with these migrant populations. And again, with the backdrop of a fragile economy, I just do wonder the economic ramifications of all this and the willingness of some Americans, as you say, that want to go work in a field for 12 hours in the sun. I don't necessarily see that willingness on a lot of Americans that are here legally and born here.
I will say one of the biggest problems with citing the low unemployment rate right now is that when you look at the breakdown of the jobs reports over the past couple of years from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you'll find that the jobs gained were all among foreign-born workers, and that American-born workers actually lost jobs. In the last jobs report we looked at, it was something like 1 million jobs gained among foreign-born workers, 1 million lost among American-born workers. So we do have a situation where there are a lot of American citizens who are not able to find work because of the importation of foreign labor. So I think when you consider that factor, you wouldn't see as much of an inflationary effect as you're anticipating, although I think it's fair to say that some prices would probably go up. And outside of the financial and economic question, I think it's a question of values and of how we view our country. Do we view our country as just a big business where the goal is to always reduce the cost of goods and allow people access to cheap labor and products? Or do we view this as a place where we want Americans who pay into the system to have meaningful, gainful employment, to have some purpose in their life, to have good jobs, to be able to have the American dream? And maybe we're okay with paying a little bit more for some goods because we value that more highly than just having, a cheap iPhone.
You do have a lot of faith in the American consumer when those prices potentially will go up. We'll see if that happens, and of course, we'll see what the President-elect Trump is able to accomplish in these early days with a Congress that's even closer than what we're seeing right now in this 118th Congress.
Very true, and maybe you're right. Maybe they won't like the high prices as much if they come.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna cover more on rising. We have a lot more to talk about. Stick around. We'll be right back.